Good morning, and a warm welcome to everyone joining us for this webinar. I am Brian Irvin, Comms Engagement here at Cray. We at Cray pride ourselves in our participatory research. We are a team of autistic and non-autistic staff and students based within UCL's Institute of Education and part of the Department of Psychology and Human Development. Here at Cray, we aim to conduct high-quality, cutting-edge research and ensure the results of those research reach those who stand to benefit from us. This webinar series is just one part of that, allowing people both within and beyond academia to hear from some of the key researchers, practitioners, and advocates in this field. At this point, I'd like to say a big thank you to our funders, supporters, and team members who contribute to our work and make it all possible. In particular, a special thanks to the Pears Foundation for their generous ongoing support that underpins everything that we do. Through everything we do at Cray, we take a participatory approach, which means we work with autistic people in all stages of our research and initiatives, from the initial design right through to the sharing of the outcomes. We hope that this means that the work we do is meaningful for our wider autistic community. This is why I'm particularly excited today to be sharing with you participatory research from across the globe. So I'm delighted to welcome Professor Shinichiro Kumagaya and Dr. Satsuki Ayaya from the University of Tokyo to introduce the concept of Tōjisha-kenkyū. They're going to take us through the history of Tōjisha-kenkyū, or self-directed research. It's a radical approach that challenges dominant psychiatric narratives. They're going to tell us about its origin as a grassroots movement led by people with mental health conditions, to expanding into a powerful method for self-advocacy, research co-production, and challenging epistemic injustice for all. As always, we invite you to become part of the conversation. But this month, to aid us with the translation, can we please ask that you submit any questions for our panelists here to the Q&A. Now, this is also our first translated interview, and I'd like to express our profound thanks to Dr. Nanami Harada. So I'm going to move across at this point. Thank you, Professor Kumagaya and Dr. Ayaya. It's all over to you.
I will share our slides and get started. 皆さん、こんにちは。
Hello, everyone. We are honored to have this opportunity to introduce our research to you. Today, we would like to introduce a new research field called the Tōjisha-kenkyū. My name is Satsuki Ayaya. I am a Japanese autistic researcher, and I have been working on Tōjisha-kenkyū for many years. In recent years, I have also been working on issues related to advocating for human rights of autistic people and for collaborative research between various minorities and academia. I'm writing books and papers, giving lectures, and leading a self-help group as an autistic. My name is Shinichiro Kumagaya. I was born quadriplegic due to cerebral palsy, and using a powered wheelchair. I have been working as a pediatrician. Now we are conducting our research at Research Center for Advanced Science and Technology at the University of Tokyo in Japan. Let me begin by talking about what is Tōjisha-kenkyū. In 2001, the Tōjisha-kenkyū was established at the Urakawa Bethel House, which is regional activity based of parties with psychiatric disorders. Tōjisha-kenkyū is a practice of studying to better understand one's own self with the help of their peers. It is now spreading to many self-help groups, and others facing various problems in Japan and also in other countries. The term Tōjisha means an individual with some hardship or minority status, and kenkyū means research, that is observing one's own self, making hypotheses, experimenting in one's daily life and sharing them with their peers. We think Tōjisha-kenkyū is a never-ending process that keeps us exploring where our unchangeable line can be drawn. It is interesting when we can conduct new experiments on ourselves and discover what we can change through Tōjisha-kenkyū. If it's something that you cannot change, you can carefully analyze it and use it as a resource to change society's designs. In this way, it can be said that Tōjisha-kenkyū is an effort to change one's own self and also the society. In addition, the externalization approach is used in Tōjisha-kenkyū. This is the idea of separating the problem from the person in question. In the current society, people think that the problem and person are connected, and we focus on the person who has the problem, and we believe that the person should pay attention to the problem, reflect, apologize, and take responsibility for improvement. The externalization approach in Tōjisha-kenkyū, however, sees the problem and the person in question as separate, and those around the person withheld the attitude of blame. The person, along with everyone else, views the problem and respects the structure of the problem. Furthermore, we believe that Tōjisha-kenkyū has the power to break the norm. People with minority characteristics, such as Dr. Ayaya, who are difficult to identify at first glance, may feel anxious and a sense of alienation when their experiences do not match with the concepts that are taken for granted in existing medical definitions and discourses that have already been dismissed by senior people with disabilities in the same category. However, even at such times, in the case of Tōjisha-kenkyū, once diagnostic criteria and conventional discourse are set aside, you share with your peers the problem that exists within the individual, which even you don't understand. Then you analyze your own experience and try to create words that can explain it. Furthermore, by sharing research findings with peers, the words spread to other peers, creating a place where new concepts and words can be passed on. In this way, through Tōjisha-kenkyū, we can grasp about yourself, to feel less cumbersome about yourself, and to live more easily. It also allows you to update the already existing medical definitions and discourses of senior members. Next, we will introduce different styles of Tōjisha-kenkyū. Urawa Bethel's house, the birthplace of Tōjisha-kenkyū, has many members with schizophrenia. Therefore, in Tōjisha-kenkyū at Urawa Bethel's house, auditory hallucination experiences are often externalized by calling them Mr. Auditory Hallucination, or by drawing images of them. Members then listen to their fellow members' ideas on how to deal with Mr. Auditory Hallucination rather than how to make it disappear. The Dark Women's House, a self-help recovery facility for female drug addicts, also conduct Tōjisha-kenkyū from early on. Because many people at the facility are highly anxious, they use methods that emphasize anonymity. They study their words by looking at them together, categorizing them, and examining their relevance. At least 8 commonalities between Urakawa Bethel's house and the dark woman's house have been found. First, open yourself and share with your friends. This has become the watchword. Be yourself together. Second, putting one's problems outside oneself. This is the externalization I mentioned earlier. Listen to your fellow researchers, not with condemnation or evaluation, but with excitement due to the interest and concern. Fourth, instead of proceeding with your research in isolation, you should be able to receive the wisdom of your peers as a prior research. Fifth, see symptoms not as objects to be dealt with in the future, but as signs that have already occurred as a result of helping oneself. Six, when new discoveries are made in the course of research, they are received with celebration and joy by fellow researchers. 7. Relax the sense of purpose in healing, overcoming obstacles, achieving results, etc. 8. Let down your guard against others before your peers do. Tōjisha-kenkyū also includes methods other than using words. For example, in the case of Tōjisha-kenkyū with elementary school students, the children drew pictures that represented their problems like game characters such as Pokemon and shared them with each other. In another Tōjisha-kenkyū, a person with depression expressed his struggle in a three-dimensional craft. I worked on Tōjisha-kenkyū, which has the above characteristics. In doing so, I was conscious of the need to reconsider the autism spectrum condition based on the social model of disability. In our research, we have valued perspective of the social model of disability that emerged in the UK in the 1970s. As you all know, in this view, disability is not considered as an individual abnormality that should be fixed, but a mismatch between social environment designed for the majority and minorities. The current diagnostic criteria for autism includes the difficulties in social communication. However, applying this perspective of this social model of disability to autism, we can think that difficulties in social communication are not an individual abnormality that should be fixed, but a mismatch between a standard communication style designed for the majority and autistic people. In other words, the difficulties in social communication are not a trait within an individual. We can say that it is only a phenomenon that occurs between the majority and autistic people. We began to develop these arguments in 2007. Around that Around the same time, in 2012, a British autistic researcher, Damian Milton, made a similar proposal called the double empathy problem, which is very well known. These proposals began to be supported by experiments from 2020 onwards, and concept of autism is gradually being updated. It is not only the formal aspect of communication that are designed for the majority. The language exchange in communication is also made in favor of the majority. Language is an essential interpretive resource for the meaningful perception of one's experience. And if one's words are not fully trusted, an equal communication space cannot be achieved. Yet, some people are unfairly excluded from these activities due to the prejudices and power that infect society. Philosopher Miranda Flicker called this situation epistemic injustice. Flicker classified epistemic injustice into two types. One is testimonial injustice. This is when a listener's prejudice unduly reduces the credibility given to the speaker's words. For example, a situation in which the testimony of a Black person talking about his or her experiences is discredited by a white judge. Another is hermeneutical injustice. This is a situation in which oppressed people are excluded from the space in which they create concepts and phrases that make sense of their experiences. Thus, preserving their concepts and phrases from circulation in society. For example, when the concept of postpartum depression did not exist, women are unable to make sense of their experiences and were misunderstood as immoral and selfish by those around them. Now, researcher Robert Chapman, who is autistic himself, states that under the current diagnostic criteria for autism, autistic people are often placed in a situation of testimonial injustice by being seen as unreliable as narrators or interpreters of social situations. Autistic people are also placed in a state of hermeneutical injustice. After my diagnosis, I was faced with the fact that there was no word in the world to adequately describe my experiences due to the fact that language is designed for the majority. Around 2006, when I believed that autism as described by a professional not adequately interpreting my experiences, I began to use Tōjisha-kenkyū approach to try to describe the characteristics of my own interception, external perception, and memories that I experienced prior to communicating with others. At that time, I did not depart from the diagnostic criteria of deficit of in social communication and social interaction, but tried to generate words that would describe my personal experiences. In 2008, I published a book titled Tōjisha-kenkyū on developmental disorders. Through Tōjisha-kenkyū on my characteristics, I have hypothesized that my consciousness absorbed plenty of local rather than global information from outside and inside the body, and it requires a longer time to integrate them into the meaning and behavior. I have called this hypothesis difficulties in integrating this hypothesis. I have also expressed another way of saying that it is easy to notice discrepancy between predictions and sense conveying reality, that is, prediction error. Series of Tōjisha-kenkyū and collaborative research with scientists, I have come to believe that sensitivity to prediction error may be a physical characteristic shared to some extent not only by me, but also by autistic people. This hypothesis has been proposed by predictive coding theory, which models the brain as an organ that makes predictions and interference. And I have been collaborating with researchers in this field. Let me explain in detail. It seems that I tend to receive a lot of information from the outside and inside of the body at the final level than a lot of people. As an example of information from the inside of the body, it is difficult for me to understand the sense of hunger. A lot of information is always delivered from various parts of the body to me, such as legs being cold, shoulder being heavy, scalp being itchy, and so on. When new information is added to them, or quantity and quality of each information change, a lot of inferences such as, did I get cold? Did I depressed? Am I depressed? Do I have some troubles? Am I tired? Am I chilly? And am I hungry? It also included as just a candidate of inference among them. The situation lasts for a long time. Ultimately, I succeed in integrating these synchronous information into hunger as a whole. I notice that I'm hungry only after I miss 2 meals. In addition, sometimes by the time I realize it, I can't move anymore. For so many years, I have used that eat on time, regardless of whether I'm hungry or not, method. However, that often leads me to decide it's time, but I'm not hungry, and continue working without eating. So having a family member or colleague ask me to eat lunch with them has been a good help. Next, I seem to pay higher resolution attention to various information from outside the body than the majority of people. Here's an example in the visual scene that I see various objects in the close-up view just as I am drawn into them, even in my everyday life. I took a close-up picture and showed it to a friend, wanting to convey my sensation. Then he agreed, wow, this is weird. But at the same time, he said, but I've never seen such a close-up before. In terms of auditory information, I tend to pick up a lot of fine sounds. In lively places such as restaurants and pubs, I receive such sounds as voices, dish sounds, background music, and so on. And I will soon become overwhelmed. In such situation, it is very difficult for me to listen selectively to only the voice of the person I am talking to. The majority of people can extract and hear only the sounds they want to hear, but I pick up all the various noises and reverberation that interfere with my ability to discern the meaning of words. For the same reason, I not only have difficulty hearing the other people's speech, but also have difficulty hearing my own speech. So I cannot understand what I'm saying and cannot speak well. From another perspective, it could be said that I tend to categorize the world at a more fine-grained level. The world is a tool for categorizing the world, making sense of it, sharing it with others. However, granularity with which we categorize the world varies from person to person, and the everyday language circulating in the world is customized to the granularity of the majority, it is possible that I have had many experiences that cannot be expressed in everyday language because I have a finer granularity of categorization than the majority. The technical types were more granular in their categorization than everyday language, and sometimes corrected the hermeneutical injustice I faced. For example, when people around me pointed to a field and called all purple weeds, I recognized it as different various purple flowers, but I lost confidence in my own sense and the reality of the world. However, I'd be relieved to learn that the fine categorization exists when I was given a botanical encyclopedia. However, the result of Tōjisha-kenkyū and previous research have shown that many autistic people experience difficulties not only in the interpretation of interoception, but also at the level of trigeminal, facial, and glossopharyngeal nerves, such as in relieving ear pressure following vocalization, and movement of facial muscles. At least for me, these experiences are as much or more of a struggle than the communication and integration difficulties. These cranial nerves are differentiated from the pharyngeal arch. This maps the function of cranial nerves that derives from the pharyngeal arch to the symptoms seen in autism. Based on social model, I think it is necessary to distinguish and describe communication difficulties, which are the mismatch between the majority and the neurodivergent people. In this slide, I have collated my Tōjisha-kenkyū publications and previous research reported as physical characteristics of autistic people. Recently, I have been particularly interested in interoception, which is sensation from internal organs, muscles, and skeleton. By understanding these characteristics of myself, I am able to choose environments that suit me rather than change my characteristics. For example, I avoid places with loud echoes, talking voices, and background music, such as enclosed spaces with concrete walls, atrium spaces, Japanese pubs, and live music cafes. I then choose spaces with soundproof walls, carpeting, and other sound-absorbing materials. Perforated boards in music rooms and insulation and sound-absorbing materials are also effective. Some of these suggestions have been implemented in our laboratory. For example, we found that some neurodivergent people have difficulty participating in meetings held in rooms with high reverberation. So we attached the sound-absorbing fabric to the ceiling, which proved highly effective. We also installed dimming lights to accommodate visual hypersensitivity. In addition, we are also conducting research with experts in universal design architecture to investigate accessibility for neurodivergent people at Tokyo International Airport, which is the busiest airport in Japan. I also have dyslexia, and the English letters appear to flicker like this. I conceptualize that the reason for this is that it is easy to focus on the vertical line, curves, and other parts that make up the alphabet, and that is the sense that attention to which parts is being switched at high speed. Based on this hypothesis of my characteristics, I changed the font according to the British Dyslexia Guideline. This made it possible to reduce the flickering a lot. In other words, it became possible to design a font that suits me rather than fixing my characteristics. Additionally, I feel that by using voice and sign language at the same time, or by using voice and letters at the same time, I can receive the meaning of information more clearly. Besides that, it is also helpful for me to receive vibration and sound at the same time. That is, when if the sensory information is ambiguous, multimodal sensory information at exactly the same timing helps me to narrow down the meaning of the information. When I watch TV using subtitles, even if the sound is small, I become to hear the meaning more clearly. However, when watching live broadcast, if the timing of the sound and the letters shifts even a little, it becomes increasingly unclear. Synchronous presentation of multimodal information is important. Reducing the amount of time I spend meeting with people, taking naps along the way, and using the communication rule, speaking one person at a time in turn instead of cross-talking, are the communication designs that work well for me. Even though my physical characteristics haven't changed, these designs have helped me avoid significant fatigue and worsening of my condition. While working on my own Tōjisha-kenkyū in this way, in 2011, I started Tōjisha-kenkyū meeting with my own peers with developmental conditions. Next, I will talk about its concept and practices. Otoemojite is a self-help group that conducts Tōjisha-kenkyū meetings that is managed by and composed by mainly by neurodivergent people. And videos are available on our website, so please take a look at the meeting. Our research focuses on both difficulties that happen even when someone is alone, communication difficulties that happen when interacting with others. Since August 2011, we have held 179 meetings over a period of almost 10 years, with a total of 3,537 participants. All of the research titles can be found on our website. Also, at the Tōjisha-kenkyū meeting on the 1st of December 2014, we talked about characteristics related to sense of temperature. This slide, which classifies some of what we said, suggests that characteristics were that they are less likely to notice global temperature changes, while they are more sensitive to southern air temperature changes. This is an interesting contrast, given that body temperature changes are classified as intersection and air temperature exchange are classified as extrasection. Chapman and Carroll list 4 necessary conditions for correcting the humanical injustice of autistic people. The third of these is autistic epistemic communities that develop words that reflect the unique needs and preferences of autistic people. We can say that Tōjisha-kenkyū group Otoemojite is an example of such a community. In our meetings, we have tried to design communication rules that suit us. For example, based on our characteristic of sensory sensitivity and tiredness, we have set the following rule. Food and drinks with small smell or sound are acceptable. Please refrain from eating food with strong smell, noisy food, or alcohol. Arriving late, leaving early, canceling at the last minute, or skipping are okay. Lying down on the sofa is okay. On the other hand, we also set the following rules. Please refrain from moving around continuously making noises. Please refrain from speaking while someone is talking. These rules are set for coexistence between peers who are likely to behave in such a way and those who are confused by the behavior of others who behave in such a way. In Japan, experts have told us that it is impossible to run self-help groups for autistic people because we have communication difficulties. However, we continued the self-help group for 10 years. By the 5th year, We had settled on the method of facilitating the group, so since August 2017, we prepared a script for the moderator. This allowed participants to take turns as moderators. Furthermore, although one of the default rules is speak one at a time instead of cross-talking, the participant who had the most difficulty speaking suggested a further new rule, which was quickly added. If you have difficulty speaking when it is your turn will come around again at the end of session. In this way, we continue to update the rules. Now, there are 3 key points to Otoemoji-de's Tōjisha-kenkyū meeting. First, specificity. Data is important for research, so try to collect as much concrete data about your experiences in your daily life, such as when, where, with whom, how it was, and how I felt at that time. Second, structure. In your research, focus on structure such as laying out the facts along a timeline, exploring and discovering patterns rather than trying to expose who is to blame and in what way. Third, shareability. You may be afraid to tell people about your problems and you may end up thinking, let's not tell anyone about this. But first time you try to tell others, words are selected. Let's start sharing from a safe range and gradually, without overdoing it, share with a variety of people. Otoemoji has 2 main research methods. The first is research on common themes. One by one, participants share their sensations and experiences on one common theme. A timer is sounded for 1 to 2 minutes per person. Participants listen to each other's stories without exchanging opinions. This way of facilitating is based on the just talking, just listening method of a self-help group for people with addiction. This slide shows a record from whiteboard of the 130th Tōjisha-kenkyū meeting held in March 2017. The theme was what it's like to help yourself when you can't join in a conversation. The whiteboard is filled with humorous comments from participants such as pretend to listen, just nod my head, sleep, play music in my head automatically, run to the bathroom to smoke and eat and so on. Sharing such experiences reassures participants that their experiences are not just their own, but we can appreciate the action of our peers that are different from our own. The second research method of Otoemoji is research on individual themes. In the second half, all participants think about problems that one of them is having right now. This is a little exchange of opinions. We call it rushing Tōjisha-kenkyū. This slide shows a record from the whiteboard of the 173rd Tōjisha-kenkyū meeting held in June 2017. The theme proposed by a participant whose anonymous name is S146 was, "It's time to break before I get tired." The whiteboard captures their problem, recorded the facilitator. "I get too nervous when talking to people. My head doesn't stop spinning even after the conversation is over, and it has a negative impact on my sleep." In response, peers shared similar experiences and strategies they have used to manage such situations. Inspired by these contributions, S146 devised experimental plans such as resting my head without doing any activities and trying Chinese herbal medications or melatonin pills. We have also created a practical worksheet for beginners to practice how to facilitate Tōjisha-kenkyū. In this worksheet, you will learn the basic method of how to facilitate your peers' Tōjisha-kenkyū, including how to improvise in response to narrative tendencies of your peers. Furthermore, this worksheet emphasizes quality to avoid a hierarchical relationship and to avoid falling into armchair story. It emphasizes sharing with kids and practice in daily life. In the Tōjisha-kenkyū worksheet, we will research two main aspects of yourself. The first is the aspect of the self which does not change over time. For this aspect, we will do a work called patterns of struggles to find out what kind of struggles you are repeating. The other aspect is the self which changes with time but is continuous. For this aspect, we will do a work called chronological struggles. We will explore how our level of struggles has changed along a time axis. There are three other important works. The first is a work that considers not only personal factors, but also societal factors when considering background factors that cause the problem. It is based on the social model of disability, and it is aimed broadening the perspective of those who assume that they are the cause of all problems. The second is work process, which peers exchange worksheets with each other and then read and comment on each other's worksheets. We think that sharing the difficulties with each other is the most important task. However, if you tell your peers to advise, you should do this, the person being told feel attacked and their safety is threatened. It is necessary to repeatedly explain to participants that they should only share their own similar experiences, not advice. The third is the work of experiment plan. As an experiment in daily life, we consider specific actions that are less stressful and can be tried immediately. This action includes changes in the way we feel and think. After the experiment, we will also fill out an experiment report. Because it is an experiment, failures are also valuable data. There's no need to feel ashamed or depressed about failure. We tell participants in the beginning that we should think the experience as a treasure and use it as a resource to reconsider for the next experiment. Here's the record of the whiteboard practice of the 149 meeting of Prof. Tōjisha-kenkyū held in October 2018. The personal theme was the degree of closeness of friendship. You can see that elements of the work are almost all the whiteboard. Whilst keeping the elements of the worksheet in mind as a basis, when actual facilitating on the whiteboard, you will have to be flexible and adapt to the narrative of your peers. To translate the knowledge about comforting environments for autistic people gained through Tōjisha-kenkyū and collaborative research with scientists into social changes, we have been working on outreach and collaboration with enterprise, legislation, medicine, academia, media, and disability organizations through lectures, workshops, and training programs. Here is a summary of today's content. Autistic people are placed in both humanical and testimonial injustice. Tōjisha-kenkyū by Japanese autistic and neurodivergent people is correcting hermeneutical injustice by creating a concept and phrases that represent the experiences that cannot be expressed in technical terms or everyday language for the majority. increasing the social credibility of knowledge originating from autistic people through co-production between autistic researchers and scientists may contribute to some extent to correcting testimonial injustice surrounding autism. The knowledge about comfortable environments for autistic people gained through Tōjisha-kenkyū and co-production can bring social changes through collaboration with enterprise, legislation, medicine academia, media disability organizations, and others. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you ever so much for that. That was just amazing. It is my absolute pleasure when I do these things to keep an eye on what's going on alongside the in the chat. The chat, people who have responded so warmly and with interest and with the realization that we are all talking about the same things. Thank you ever so much. Before we go on to the Q&A, I am going to do a quick little roundup, and then we've got time for probably about 3 or 4 questions. So thank you both of you from taking us from the historical roots in Bethel House and the DARC to a powerful tool that wrestles with externalization and blame. There is something in what you were telling us about your personal experience as a fundamental truth, and then sharing that fundamental truth through solidarity, openness, excitement, celebrating discovery, the loosening of a sense of purpose. I love that phrase, especially by things like Pokemon. From that, you took us into talking about prejudice, discreditation, exclusion from the places of meaning making. I want to particularly thank Satsuki-san for building a case against hermeneutical injustice through the experiential words that she shared. As someone myself, I have no idea when I'm hungry. The ideas about integrative process, it rings so true. Likewise, sensitivity to predictive error and the granularity of categorization resonates with the experiences that others have told me. Bringing experience back to the interplay between interoception and a sensitivity to the world echoes a common theme that we have here in discussions at Cray. Thank you for sharing with us this idea of Tōjisha-kenkyū in practice, through multimodal communication, through things like taking naps. Oto-emojiti, I can never say these things. Thank you for bringing that, thank you bringing that group. And the development of vocabulary to express how the world is encountered through data, structure, and shareability. And this gives us a place for non-hierarchical openness in relationships. And thank you personally for the phrase, failures are valuable data. I needed to hear that. Thank you. I needed to hear that today. Thank you. So this whole idea that then ends up with outreach and collaboration that magnifies, well, it magnifies comfort. Thank you ever so much. At this point, I'm going to stop our recording so that we can then move across to questions and answers.